economist here, Paul Volcker.
Well, thank you, Ruth, but I must say I'm the odd man out here. I'm not an expert in this area. I am not a public official. I haven't had to deal with it directly. But I also know you can't live in the United States these days without recognizing we have a big drug problem. And I have one quality that nobody else in this panel has. I believe I'm the oldest. And I can remember 50 years ago when President Nixon, in his first State of the Union message, announced the war on drugs. And a famous general was put in charge of the war on drugs. Well, it's 50 years later, and I think everybody kind of admits the war on drugs was not a great success. And there's a lot of turmoil in the United States, of all places, about this problem to a degree that has not been true before. We do have a big economic problem. Just keeping people in jail is a big economic problem. But it's a health problem. The economic side goes beyond just the people in jail, but we know about the social cost, the family cost, the employment cost, many other costs. So I'm glad to see the ferment in the United States. You already referred to the fact that here in a presumably very conservative election, the momentum for liberalizing marijuana seems to be continuing. Now, my little role is I'm a very conservative person myself. When I see what's going on, yes, we don't want to criminalize this. We want to decriminalize it. We shouldn't be blaming the people or taking measures against individuals for consumption that are destructive, socially destructive to families, destructive in many other ways. But are we ready to have a complete free-for-all? And it's hard to say that, I think, right now in the United States, where we seem to be developing new methods of distributing some of the more harmful drugs. But we're going to have a lot of experimentation. I see one of our planks of this organization is states must eventually explore regulatory models for all illicit drugs. They mean states around the world. I can interpret it states in the United States have all kinds of opportunities now for experimenting with what kind of regulation we want. You know, in some ways, the biggest drug we have is alcohol, but we don't prohibit consumption of alcohol, although it is a major problem, among other places, on college campuses all over the United States with binge drinking. We don't outlaw the students, but somehow we, in alcohol for many years, have found various means of some regulation. We don't sell it to children. We tax it, in part. Big question, what should we do about taxing marijuana in particular? Is this a way to get some kind of degree of control and some economic benefit and undercutting the market for the sale of marijuana by intermediaries? There's a lot to be done in this area, I think. But you can only welcome the fact that this degree of experimentation is going on, and the sensitivity to new drugs, illicit prescription delivery, or too much ease. That's not a criminal offense, but is there enough discipline in the medical profession in terms of drug behavior? Many questions in this area. How about access to children? Do we really want marijuana in candy, marijuana in cookies? Do we want marijuana around in its most severe types without some notification that this is a more dangerous type than some other recreational uses of marijuana? All kinds of questions, I think, need an answer. But I think hopefully we're on the way to getting those answers once we clarify a little bit that we're not going to penalize by criminal action and put in jail or other means of controlling the consumer. So let's look at regulation and what is the appropriate form of regulation rather than a complete free-for-all. I can't resist telling a little story where this influenced me personally. I was asked to address a group of maybe 100 people or so, because they knew I was in this group, about what to do about drugs. And I repeated the story you hear here less effectively, that the time has come for decriminalization, but I think we need a little concern about how we regulate it most effectively, how we tax it most effectively, whatever. I got finished my talk. A grandmotherly type, I interpreted her as grandmotherly, came up to me and gray hair, a little irate, and she said, "I don't believe a word you said." And I thought I was going to get a tirade against liberalization. She said, "I come from Humboldt County, California. We grow the best marijuana in all the world, and I don't want the government messing around with our marijuana." Now, I think she was a little extreme the other way. I do want the government maybe to consider what to do about their marijuana, but I'm not going to stop that grandmother from growing marijuana in Humboldt County. So I welcome the ferment in this area. We haven't got this problem licked by any means by 50 years of war, but I think we are reaching a point where perhaps we recognize the cost of the war and can find more reasonable ways of dealing with it. And when I listen to the other people on the panel that know so much more about this than I and have directly dealt with this problem, I can't help but feel some sense of encouragement.
Thank you, Paul. You have